Mr. Howard, I remember reporting and being with you during your visit there for the first anniversary of the attack, and everything was obviously so fresh in the memories of the survivors of the attack and so on. But on that issue that you spoke about, the connection between our two countries, the cooperation between our law enforcement through the investigations and so on, I do recall a sneak peek into the ideas and the thoughts of the next president of Indonesia, that being President Yudhoyono, at that memorial that you attended on behalf of the nation all those years ago. Can you reflect on that speech and how that was received by those in attendance? Because it was a very fierce condemnation, wasn't it, of terrorism?
It was a magnificent speech by SBY, as he was widely known, the coming president of Indonesia. He spoke fiercely about the evil of terrorism. He spoke about the bonds between our two countries, and he spoke of the resolve of the Indonesian people to fight terrorism. And in a sense, he established himself as the tribune of peaceful cooperation against terrorism between Australia and Indonesia, and he captured the mood, because ever since the Bali attacks, our two countries have worked together so closely, and he greatly helped it. He went on to become a fully democratically elected Indonesian president. I remember attending his inauguration not long after the 2004 election, which was about a year after he made that speech. And he would go on to be president of Indonesia for a number of years. Two of his children were educated at Edith Cowan University in Western Australia. So he had very strong links with this country. He was very fond of it. And we tried in different ways to repay that friendship.
Exactly a year ago this day, 3 bombs exploded on the beautiful, peaceful island of God. 202 men and women perished that evening. Never mind your nationalities, never mind your race, religions, or ethnicity, or profession. They were our sons, our daughters, our fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, our cousins, our best friends, and our soulmates.
We in this part of the world must make common cause to fight the scourge of terrorism. The events of the last year have brought the people of Australia and the people of Indonesia closer together. And I want, on behalf of all of the Australians present, to express my gratitude to the leaders and the people of Indonesia.
Out of the trauma, the triumph of the human spirit was also evident, wasn't it, from those brave individuals who sought to try and drag people out of those burning nightclubs, to the triumph of the medical teams that helped Australians, the victims, deal with their physical trauma over many months and years.
You know, I think of the many heroes of that terrible night, and two I especially call to mind are Dr. Fiona Wood of the Royal Perth Hospital, the head of the burns unit, who later became Australian of the Year in recognition in large part of the work that she did in treating the terrible burns that people suffered. I mean, you can only imagine the pain and suffering of people who survived but were left horribly burnt. She did a wonderful job. And Dr. Len Nataris, who led the trauma unit at Royal Darwin Hospital, he oversaw effectively the medical clearing stations for victims. I just think of them. There are many others. There are I remember talking to a young female recruit into the RAAF who spoke with pride at how she had worked several hours beside a squadron leader as they kept alive a young man who'd been horribly injured while he was flown to Darwin. Now, they're the wonderful stories, and people cooperated with enormous pride. It was a tremendous illustration of the capacity of Australians, without mucking around or standing on any kind of ceremony, to work together in a common cause, and it was a common humanitarian cause. And many lives were saved by the Australian way of getting on with it and getting it fixed in the most effective and direct way possible.
And finally, I do remember some of those receptions and so on where you were with family, loved ones, friends of those whose lives were lost. As Prime Minister of the day, these were not, many of these occasions weren't on camera, but it was a grieving that you had to do with them. I know that many of them would embrace you, come up to you and want to share their grief with you. It was almost like a shared grief in that period.
Well, in a situation like that, you just have to do your best as a human being. Some people want a firm handshake and acknowledgement. Others want a hug. Others want a combination of the two. Others want to tell you all about whatever it is. You respond, remembering that the last thing you should do is make it more difficult for them by being unable to handle it. And they want somebody who, Prime Minister, who can control his or her emotions, but they also want a Prime Minister who shows that he or she has got emotion. And you just have to try and combine the two, and I did that as best I could. I'm sure it could have been better, but in a situation like that, you can only say how you feel and behave in a way that you hope, in a minuscule way, tiny way, will offer a little bit of comfort and a little bit of reassurance, and to give people the feeling that their fellow Australians are thinking of them.
Former Prime Minister John Howard, 20 years on from those terrible attacks. I appreciate your time and your reflections today.
Thanks very much.